Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. I just thought I'd do a random hangout because it was a subject that I really didn't want to do a video on because it kind of nails you down on the subject. You can't change your mind on what you see, and a vast amount of there's a vast amount of different directions you can take on a subject like this. And if you've been watching the news and you've been watching movies lately, you probably noticed there was a high school football player. Well, it says high school football player arrested for his alleged role in fellow student having sex with multiple partners. We're going to talk a little bit about who and what. We can't say her name, but that's one of the first things you noticed. They can't say the Florida girl's name because she's a victim, they say. She's a victim of giving away free sex. But in every single case, the boys' pictures and names were spread around the press. Doesn't matter. Throw rocks at boys. Boys must be responsible for this. Boys must be responsible for females' decisions. Now, at first, I thought this was a lie. And then I started looking at the multiple scripts and the multiple threads. And in Fort Myers, I think it's Fort Myers, they say, first off, it says a fellow student has been arrested in the case of a 15-year-old girl who allegedly had sex with multiple partners in a high school bathroom. A 16-year-old member of the high school football team was arrested. So a boy was arrested automatically. Throw rocks at boys. A boy was arrested on Friday for his alleged role in the incident. He was charged with 2 felonies for a 16-year-old boy that had sex with a one-time act and a female student, a woman, a girl that was 15, had multiple sex accounts. So boys are subhuman in this case. Boys were the willing participants and abhorrent acts of sex and prostitution and human trafficking. But the female, she's just a victim in this case. Because he is a minor, people are not it says because he is a minor, people are not naming the suspect, but they already named the suspect. They already put it up. A judge ordered the boy to 21 days. So here's a judge now involved with teenage sex in a high school bathroom. A judge ordered and barred him from school grounds. Now there's 25 other boys involved with this, and they're finding each boy one at a time, and they're charging them with felonies. And they're charging these people. What they're saying about this female is she was a victim of trafficking. Now we can go to the next. Fort Myers, 15-year-old girl we're talking from the family, girl filmed having sex. Now, anytime you're filmed, it's voyeurism. If you don't know you're being filmed, it's voyeurism. If you have the expectation of not being filmed, and in this case, she's having sex with 25 multiple partners in a public bathroom, so the expectation of being filmed at any point is null and void, except in Florida, where they're about the stupidest people in the whole world, I suppose. A 15-year-old girl had only been a student at Fort Myers for 2 weeks. That may have something to do with it. She spent I would have to ask why she was transferred to that school, what things had happened when NBC2 learned with a horror that she was a sex slave at this high school, she says. Now they're trying to make this out like this female just didn't have sex with so many boys. And by the way, this happens all the time in high schools. Girls have multiple sex partners in public bathrooms all the time, especially with football players. Now, one thing I noticed at the end of this article in a statement to people, and that's why I thought it was, I thought this was a made up story, because there is a movie that people promotes under IFC that has this very same storyline. It has this very same incidents. Everything about it is the same. Now, I don't know if this is a real sheriff. Lee County Sheriff Mike Scott confirmed the arrest. While it is regrettable that the incident occurred in first place, we are always committed to holding everyone, he says, everyone responsible for their actions, except for the girl, which had sex with 25 guys. And at any point during this sexual adventure that she was on, could have said, no, stop. No, stop. And then she would have been a victim. But I don't see anything about no's or stops or anything like that. She was a willing participant in sex acts with multiple partners. Now, I still have my doubts about this story. And I'd like to say happy June 1st. And this is coming up to one of my favorite holidays, and one of the holidays that don't get, we just went through Memorial Day weekend, and happy Memorial Day. I had a video made up, but I wasn't happy with it, so I didn't do it. And but we're having a video. June 19th is coming up, and June 19th is one of the oldest known celebrations of the end of slavery in the United States. And I always thought that Mgtow Day should be on June 19th. This is the day that they celebrate Black America saved slavery on June 19th. So that day's coming up. And I think Mgtow should celebrate that, because that's what we talk about in Mgtow a lot. We talk about modern day slavery, and that's what this story is about. This story is about the implications of modern day slavery. A 15-year-old girl, was it really slavery? Was it really she had a pimp there? Was there a pimp there? Was there money exchanged? And it says often that the girl engaged in the sexual acts with several boys. She engaged. She participated. She volunteered. She took part. She, participated. There's a lot of words to say, but sexual slavery is stretching it a little, isn't it? Sexual slavery is pushing it a little, because that makes all the boys felons, and all the boys probably will be charged with felonies. So this puts 25 boys' futures at risk. 25 families are now in financial risk. There might be up to 40. We don't know if how long she's been doing this. 2 weeks at the school, and all of a sudden she's in the bathroom having sex with multiple partners. I'm sure that the boys didn't show up there because they just showed up there for no reason at all. They showed up there because there was rumors. They showed up there because there was rumors about a female in the bathroom that was giving out sex. That's why they showed up. There was no, we have to think about these things logically. And that's what we try to do around Mgtow, is we think about these things logically. How many boys were there? It must have been over a period of several days. But the girl is being let off the hook. And it's not that the girl is being let off the hook. It's not that it's not that the boys were not involved in an abhorrent act that they should not have been involved. They should keep their penises in their pants. And that's their crime. Exposure. Accepting sex, I don't know if that's a crime. And I don't know about the age of consent in Florida. I tried to get Warhorse on, because he probably know more about the age of consent in Florida than I would know, because I live in Ohio, and the age of consent, I don't even know the age of consent. I think it's 18 years old, or probably 26, because females are always under parentage. But they're arresting all the boys. And Lee Lee County Sheriff's Mike Scott is getting involved because he wants to hold every boy, every single boy that was responsible for their actions, but no one's going to hold any women responsible. Now you got to ask, how many women knew about this? Was this in the females' bathroom? Were there females that no females visited that bathroom? I don't know. They don't say. It's regrettable that the article is not very well detailed because the press really kind of sucks nowadays. They don't ask the questions that should be asked. Did you volunteer? Was it the female's bathroom? Was it the boys' bathroom? Was it a transgender bathroom? Was anybody allowed in that bathroom? Because that's what people want to know. No. So the boy was charged with taking the pictures and spreading it around Facebook, I think. He was charged with possession of obscene material and probably disseminating child porn, but I don't know if he can be disseminating child porn since he is a child. Excuse me. I just got my coffee in this morning. I roasted some up. It's a beautiful blend of Nicaraguan coffee that is in season now. And I was drinking some. I always roast my own coffee. You should try it. Anyone should try that. Just to see how that goes for them. See if they like it better. See if it enhances their lifestyle. I do those things. So we have a 15-year-old girl with multiple boys in a bathroom. This happens more. This happens a lot more. Hello, Dr. Leonard McCoy, always in her room. This happens more than you would think. And TFM just did a video about the guy that was taking a very nonchalant attitude about a abhorrent sex acts when a homosexual had sex with another homosexual, and then it got twisted. It got twisted up. But where do these things start getting twisted up at? They start getting twisted up from the press. They start getting twisted up in the eyes of the public. Yes, let's look at this. Let's look at it reasonably. You had a 15-year-old girl having sex in the bathroom. It doesn't seem like she's remorseful or unwilling or not to participate in it. It seems like she's just going through her teenage years, and she wants to. She has no control over herself, and hence most teenage boys have no control over themselves. The girl's wrong. I don't see how this thing went. Now you look at the staff of the school. How did this thing go on unnoticed? There has to be a time period here where this is over a period of hours and hours, but no staff member noticed. No one ran to a staff member. No one said to a staff member that maybe you should be patrolling the bathrooms. In my school, you couldn't even smoke a cigarette without a staff member being there. And I often tried it, and I often got suspended from it. I couldn't smoke a quarter of a cigarette without getting caught. That's how it was in my school. At Fort Myers High School. I don't know which exactly high school this was. I think I mentioned it earlier. But there was no staff members around or police. How many police officers do you have in a regular school, high school? 5, 6, 7 walking the hallways, hall monitors, responsible students. In this case, no hall monitors, no responsible students. Said, hey, there's something happening that shouldn't be happening. No staff out of 50, 60 teachers, janitors, secretaries, floor polishers, maintenance workers, police officers. They have just been there. Nobody said anything. It was unnoticed for hours and hours and hours. Well, I would start asking if the principal should be fired at that point. I would start asking who should be fired at that point, because there should be someone fired at that point. I'm sure that the female's parents, I would be shocked if it was my daughter. And I would say the same thing probably. It was something else rather than her having immoral moments. That's what I would say as a father. I would say, God, how could this be happening? And if they threw the coupon of sexual trafficking at me and said this will relieve her of everything, she will not get a felony, because she had sex with the boys, she was prostituting herself. She was equally responsible, and that's what this is about, equality. We're talking about she is equally responsible for 25 acts of sexual perversion with boys, and she was equally responsible in participating in film that got disseminated over. She's participating in prostitution and dissemination of pornography because she was a participant. But no, not in today's world. It's the boy that took the pictures, some random boy that they're charging, and 25 other males why she's a victim of sexual trafficking. And that's about all I wanted to talk about today. That's all I wanted to do in this broadcast. I don't think anybody's coming in, so I won't make it a long broadcast. I just wanted to make it a broadcast so people look at this, and I'll put the articles in a low bar. You can go over them, and you can look at them, and you can view them, and you can make your decision who is responsible. Everybody's responsible. There's a lot of people responsible, from the parents of the girl who was supposed to be looking after her. That's another question. Is there's an amount of parentage that wasn't done there. The school officials were obviously not looking after the interests of the female. If this is a thing that, don't tell me that this didn't take hours and nobody's seen it. Don't tell me that, because then you're just a liar. And that's what they'll do. They'll lie. They'll say, oh, we just missed it. We just missed this because it's not that we weren't doing our jobs. It was we were so overwhelmed by teaching. We were so overwhelmed by having to do our job. And part of their job is protecting students against this sort of thing. When 50 or so boys disappear from classrooms, someone's got to ask where they're at. There was always a sort of rule in the school, and I remember it very well. If you had to push a button, the teacher had to push a button, and that tells when boys were in every classroom. If the buttons on the secretary's board, they used to have boards back then, and on the buttons on the secretary's board, if you got more than 5 or 6 of them lit up at any time, that means the boys were up to something. At that point, there's like, if 100 boys are missing out of the classrooms, standing in line waiting for sex, or like I said before, this was not something that randomly happened. This was a planned event. The boys were showing up because they had heard a rumor or had passed down through the grapevine that something was happening. And then awesome 50 boys. It didn't happen in between classes with that 6 minutes in between classes. There was a couple-hour period on this. And it's too many boys, and they weren't paying attention. No one was paying attention, and they should have been paying attention. There are ways you can tell, and anybody that's been in high school, any teacher that's ever taught in high school knows, they log these things. They monitor these things. Police officers are put at the school to survey the bathrooms to make sure nothing funny is going on. But in this case, there was a lot of funny going on. There's a whole lot of funny going on with this article. I'm still not convinced it's real. I think it's a Hollywood prop. I think it's some of that propaganda that's being spread that girls are victims and boys are rapists. But it's our media today, and that's what we're going to hear. And it's disturbing. And it's disturbing. It disturbs me. It disturbs me that kids can't go to school and just be kids. Children can't go to school and learn because the school administrators are so inept. Because we have a lot of inept school administrators. And they're just there to get paid. And they don't want to have to actually do anything more than lighter than air work, waving their arms and talking similarly to the way I'm talking now in front of a classroom. It's lighter than air. I could do it for hours and hours and hours endlessly without too much effort. But to actually monitor the children, to actually take care of the children, to actually do your job, that would be the hard part. Yeah, that is the part that's not lighter than air work. You have to make sure you know what's going on in your school. Obviously, nobody knew what was going on in this school. That's the responsibility of the administrators. Nobody knew about this sex scandal. Nobody knew what was going on, and that's an indictment in itself. It's a horrible indictment of the laziness, how inept the teachers are, how inept the administrators are. It's a horrible indictment of our schools. Trillions and trillions of dollars being pumped into schools that can't control the teenagers. We see these articles every single day. All you do is type in high school, and Google will supply you with 250,000 articles about abhorrent acts happening in high schools every day. And I'm starting to get the feeling that the kids aren't that bad. I'm starting to get the feeling that the kids are just running amok like kids do. Because the administrators and the teachers, and this goes down to the maintenance men and the police that are paid to be there and actually have to do these kind of jobs, like make sure that there's not 50 boys and a girl in a bathroom. So what culpability do the boys have in this? We've heard with the TFM, but the boys are just going to get excited. They're going to get a Woody, and me, I wouldn't participate because that would be a disgusting act for me. And what culpability does the female have in this event, this horrendous event? And this is not such a horrendous event. They've had it in Chicago, they've had it in Cleveland, they've had it in New York, Florida, California, Arizona, England. Pakistan probably gets it. I'm sure it was in Tokyo. We put thousands and thousands of kids together. We put all the boys on antidepressants and ADD medicine. We let girls wear whatever they want to wear, talk whatever they want to talk, be whatever they want to be. And that's usually their favorite sex star, their favorite pop figure that runs around like Miley Cyrus and doesn't wear no clothes on a fucking stage. That's what they want to be. And they're dressed up in shorts, and it's close to summer, and they want to be out of there. And the school administrators are, so overwhelmed because their lighter than air work is so taxing. These are the people that maybe they should be working in a steel mill for a couple days at 140 degrees. And then they'll appreciate being in an air-conditioned high school. And then they'll make that extra trip to the bathroom just to check out what's going on in it. Because they have no idea what's happening in their school. They're inept. Do you think for a minute if I was the principal of a high school that I would not know what was happening every second of the day? My God. I would make it my business. I'd make it my job, and I'd make it a lot of people's jobs. I would make it every teacher's job. And the teacher closest to that restroom would be fired at this point. He or she, most likely she, did not know when the boys started disappearing from the classrooms. Where were the boys? Like I said, there are ways of monitoring this. They have cameras now, they have monitoring systems, they have police. Every time a boy leaves a classroom, a button gets pushed to tell that there's one boy out of that classroom. Now, if 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 boys leave the classroom at the same time, you better believe there's something going on. Maybe they don't have a system. Maybe they're so inept that they don't have a system, a simple system of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a high school that's supposed to be teaching arithmetic. A high school that's supposed to be teaching responsibility, accountability. A high school that's supposed to be teaching boys morals, ethics, and girls ethical codes, social studies, math. That's what these things are. They're codes. They're codes of ethics that we live by. They're supposed to be teaching these things, but they can't even count how many boys are missing from the classrooms over us. I'm thinking 25 boys. I'm thinking that's going to take a little time. That's going to be surely taking a little time. But nobody knew. And I still question the plausibility of this. I still question whether it's a simple made up story by a Hollywood producer and the government to get us to look at these things, to make sure our kids are safe in schools. What about the parents? What about the parents in this? If we send our kids off to schools and we forget about them for that 8 hours, now for the male or the female that's at work, it becomes a non-issue. You're trying to do your work. You expect that the schools are functioning properly. Most of the time they're not anymore. They don't function properly because nothing functions properly in this society anymore. And then we get horrific events like this, thousands of them a year. Thousands of them, not just one. Look at your local news. Look at all the local news. It happens daily. This is just one that made the news. This is just one event that made the news. Fort Myers. Sex scandal. Seems like a lot of sex scandals happen in Fort Myers. Over the last few years, I've been seeing it a little too much. Maybe it's a tourist attraction. Maybe it's just a tourist attraction. Get the name out there. Good press, bad press. The Streisand effect. Everybody knows the name. Let's go to Fort Myers. I can't imagine wanting to go to Fort Myers. Can you imagine wanting to go to Fort Myers? I'd rather go to Cleveland in the summertime. At least on a lake, clean lake where you can go swimming without sharks, without having to worry about your high school girl having sex in the bathroom with 25 guys. No, I do live in an area of Ohio that's a tourist attraction. We have tourism here. There's the big lake and everybody likes to fish. And it should be happiness, total happiness, but it's not. But I can't remember this sort of thing happening in the high school. I do have a high school right around the corner from me. I wanted to talk about it because the high schools are becoming prison centers. They're becoming ways of extracting the wealth from they're kids for cash is what they are. They're all kids for cash. We have two high schools right here. One's the large high school where all the kids go, and then right in back of it's a rather prison-looking installation. It's the new one that they bought. It's the new school that they bought. They built it. It's got barbed wire around it. You know why it's got barbed wire around it? Because it's for it's one of those schools that when kids drop out and go to truancy, they make them go to that school and then they reclaim. It's a reclamation school for reclaiming that money that was lost. Now, you look at the major school, the high school, it no longer has a football team. It no longer has sports teams. It has a wrestling team, very good one. I go to watch it a lot. The classes are empty. You know where all the kids are? All the kids are in the back school now because they all went truant, because it's a prison industry school now. Because that's where the money is, because they divert the money from the government by reintroducing these kids back into school, which they should want to go to anyways. And now it's a situation where the kids are kids for cash, and the teachers get more money, and the administrators get more money, and the prison system gets more money, and everybody makes more money, and the kids get a horrible education. I wonder what kind of school this was. I wonder if they got one of those prison kids for cash schools in back of it, because that seems to be the way things are going. Because now they got 50, 100. I don't know how many kids this will be with the sex scandal that will be going to that reclamation school so they can reclaim the money they lost from the children. And that's usually $6,000 to $9,000. And then the government has to pay for it. Why were the children so bored? I have to ask myself, why were those kids so bored? Well, I know why the boys did it, because they have constant testosterone running through their bodies at that age, and it's just woody. It's just a constant woody, and the simple idea of a female in the bathroom probably attracted hundreds. And I can't imagine that I was wondering if she was deciding which boys actually get it. They won't say it, because it'll make the girl not a victim then. I bet there was hundreds of boys that showed up, and then she picked which one she wanted to have that act with, but they won't say it. And who's responsible for these things? Are the boys responsible for their actions? Yes. Did they expose themselves? Did they have sex in a public place? Yeah, they're responsible for that. Each boy is responsible. The girl's responsible for the same. Did she have sex in a public place? Was she willing? Was she, did she do that? Did she say no at any time? I doubt it. I think she was just a teenage girl having fun. And then it got out of control. It happens all the time in schools. It happened in my school when I was going there, at least twice that I knew of. Probably happened in your school, if you can think back. I don't know how old you are. My mind's still pretty vivid on that period, that horrible period of my life. But I can remember it happened twice a year, maybe, that a female was John. And one of the prerequisites for that was she was picking the boys that were coming into the John to have sex. That was always the way it went in my school, probably your school too. That she wasn't having sex with everybody. She was picking the boys. If the local pothead showed up and he was like all burnt out and not bathed and not in the right clothes, I'm sure she wasn't having sex with them. But was there someone collecting money for this? They've never said that. Yeah, any of the articles never said that. Was there someone collecting money? Was it a pimp? Was she doing a fundraiser? They're raising funds for a party or something they wanted to have? No, I doubt it. What were they doing? They were just teenagers in a bathroom with their raging hormones, which the school officials should have been under control. No, they didn't have it under control. They had nothing under control. And that's what bothers me. That's what bothers me about the last thing I posted about the high school boy in Arizona that exposed his penis in the school picture, the high school's football school picture. They charged him with a few felonies too. Who was under control? Who had control of that? Who was supposed to go through? Every photographer has one of those little magnifying glass where he looks for kids giving the finger, and then they erase it. But who was in charge of that? Why did it make it past the principal? Why did it make it past all the administrators? Because they're inept now. But to talk to them, they'll say their job is so magnanimous that it was so large. You can see them wiping the sweat off of their brows as they're teaching. No, I could see a steel worker doing that in a 140-degree shop as he's lifting thousands of pounds an hour. Yeah, I can see him getting overwhelmed. But I can't really see a high school teacher sitting in the school lounge drinking coffees and eating those donuts being overwhelmed. It's not that hard of a job. It's like washing laundry and vacuuming the floor. It only takes a few minutes a day. You have to stand up in front of people and speak. And if you thought of those children as people, this wouldn't have happened. But they don't think of these children as people. They think of these children as numbers, which I digress back to the reclamation schools and the prison kids for cash schools that we have going now. Because it's all about more money with them. It's all about complaints and how hard I'm working. And we're overwhelmed. Our staff is overwhelmed. when you need police officers to make sure the kids get in there. When you don't have a staff member that checks the bathrooms in a dogmatic fashion like a security guard would every 4 minutes. When you don't have those kind of people checking all the bathrooms, or that person was just obviously eating donuts, because I know there's 2 teachers every period in any high school that is designated to watch the Johns. What happened to those teachers? They're shoving donuts in their faces. Why this had happened? They're inept. It's sad. It's sad. Why would you want to send your children to one of these schools, these horrible, abhorrent schools that these things happen? If this goes on, drug use, I'm sure there's violence. I'm sure a fight could probably take place for 2 hours and they would have not noticed. If a fight was taking place for 2 hours, would they have noticed? 3 hours, 4 hours? You cannot tell me they're having sex in the bathroom, 25 to 50 boys, and it took 15 minutes? No, it didn't take 15 minutes. It took hours, and nobody noticed. If you're having a fight, if the kids were smoking in front of the school, would someone have noticed? Yes, but nobody noticed this. Nobody noticed hundreds of boys probably trying to get on that, missing from the classrooms. This is why we pay these people. This is why they go to school for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to learn how to become better administrators. And right now, I think I would probably be the best administrator. It's nothing like that's going to go on in my school if I had a school. No. Say what you want about me. That's not going to happen in my school. But it happens in this school, which I still have my doubts about the validity of the actual article, but there's hundreds of them out there now. Hundreds. People are talking. I'm looking down at my screen right now, and it's been covered in podcast after podcast after podcast now. Video after video after video. Hundreds and hundreds of incidences, all talking about the same thing. But no one's saying how inept these administrators were. How inept the police were. The police that's being paid to monitor those very things were standing where? We're standing where? Because they're unaware of the idea that a restroom is the places where these things happen, where kids smoke, do drugs, have sex. They're not having sex in front of the school. They're not having sex in the hallways. They're not having sex in the fucking coffee room. You couldn't monitor a bathroom. People that are being paid to monitor the bathroom. And then we got the police detective saying he's going to bring everyone, he's going to hold everyone responsible. Well, hold yourself responsible. Because it's the police that were at the school that were fucking inept too. That was supposed to be monitoring. Well, what do you think that happens when these kids go into school? You have no responsibility for them. You should be sending policemen down there hourly. Minutes, every minute. There's a rule in my neighborhood that if I don't see a police car come down my street every half hour, that I should call the city. That's a rule, because that's what's supposed to be taking place. But in a simple high school where all the kids from the area are packed into those things, the police department just says, we have no responsibility there. Idiots. You fucking idiots. This whole thing, the farther I go, the more it enrages me about our society today. The more it pisses me off about our society today. Because a girl can service 25 or more boys, and it's probably a lot more than 25 boys. Let me tell you, I think every boy in that school was thinking he was going to get lucky that day. And nobody caught it. Not the administrators, not the police, not the people working there. I would even blame the janitor. I said, man, what were you doing? Did you not know about this? Were you cleaning the johns like you were supposed to? Were you mopping the floors? Didn't you see the kids walking down with them big grins on their faces? You see 25 boys walking around with those big ass grins on their faces, and you and you don't ask no questions. There was no gossip. There was no chatter. You didn't notice that? Nobody noticed that. In this school, nobody noticed that. It's a shame. Everybody should be fired. Everybody should be fired in that, and they have to reapply for their job. Every one of those administrators, every one of those teachers should be fired because they didn't know, simply because they didn't know. Tell you what, when I was at the steel mill, if there was a prostitute in the John, I knew. I knew. How comes the teacher or the administrator didn't know? Or no one was monitoring, or there was no cameras, or there wasn't a simple system that counts people in a school that teaches mathematics. And that's where your real ineptness comes in. That's where you look at these people and you go, fuck, why would I send my teenage kid to any one of these schools? I'd homeschool them. I would homeschool them. I'd rather they not get an education for a few years than to send them to one of these places. It wasn't that Obama's, he was going to fix the schools. He was going to make it a wonderful place to go. We're going to actually start teaching kids things they want to learn. Failure. You fucking failure. How about Donald Trump? What's Donald Trump saying about that? What's Hillary Clinton saying about this? What's Hillary Clinton saying? Oh, we're going to pump some money into the schools. And now we got kids for cash systems of reclamation. They're reclaiming what they lost because they couldn't do it the first time, and then doubling their money. Well, that's hedging. That's hedging their bet, isn't it? No, we simply have to start firing them and fuck their feelings. And that's what this is about. Fuck you, administrators of that school and every school that this has ever happened in. Fuck your feelings. If it was up to me, I'd punch a hole in your chest. because you didn't know. You didn't know about this. And the kids are suffering. And boys are suffering right now. None of those boys have a future right now because they'll have a felony on their record. That girl doesn't have a future right now because she's going to have I don't know what she's going to have on her record. She's going to forever be known as that girl because the school administrators weren't paying attention to a girl that's been in the school for barely 2 weeks. Why was she in that school? I don't know. Why was she transferred? I don't know. Was she transferred from another school for having similar things happen to her? No one's asking the question. The press aren't informing us. So let's take this. Let's take this all the way out there. We could think a lot of things about this. We could think all sorts of horrible things about this. So let's take it all the way. Let's start asking questions about who's at fault. Was it the boy? They're going to charge the boys with felonies? That's silly. Who's really at fault? The administrators, the parents, the police. That's who's at fault. Because them are the people that aren't doing their jobs. What the fuck do you think kids do in school? What the hell do you think kids think about 24/7? Math? Math? Do you think they're thinking about doing math and ecto-sketching things? Drawing pictures? No, their hormones are raging. And then you put them in a school where you can't control things. That's what I'm thinking about. Let's tear it all down. Because obviously we should just fire every one of them and then start taking reapplications. And then on one of the applications, they said, are you going to be responsible for these kids, or are you just here for a paycheck? Because we don't want you here if you're just here for a paycheck. If you're here to do lighter than air job, if you can't walk down to the bathroom to check things out, it takes 2 minutes to get there to make sure there's nobody in the bathroom doing fucked up things. If you don't have that kind of vigor for your job, then you should please leave, especially in such an important job as high school administrator and teachers. You're not a teacher. They're not teachers at this point. They're mimickers. They're mimicking words in a book. They're not teaching nothing. They're not teaching morals or ethics or math or science. They're mimicking words in a book because they have no passion for it. And they're useless to our society. And they're producing useless children with felonies. And it's just a job. When it becomes just a job, you're just moving widgets and cogs then from widget number spot 2 and widget number spot 1. Go on, move along, move along. Move it along. That's all I do every day is I move widgets, numbers. That's not much of a, you don't have much to think about there. But when I think about this thing about teachers and administrators in schools, I think that's all they're doing, mindless widget moving. Here's what the administrators say we should teach you. Read it. I don't want to give you no inflections on that or thoughts about what I think about it. Just read it. It's sad. The shape of our schools are sad. The shape of the administrators in the schools are sad. Sad people have been manufactured by a sad industry. Now we look at the college industry in today's, the overpriced college industry that gives gender studies courses and then lets them same people teach in our schools. There should be special colleges for that, you know. And the first question on your application, are you going to be responsible for these children? Because if you're not going to be responsible for these children, we don't need you here. Because these parents are relying on you. If you're going to tell the parents to take their kids to school and leave them off at that bus or drop them off at this school, and you tell them that's a law, then the other side of the law would be, are you responsible to these children? No. No, it's lighter than air work. It's a paycheck. It's how how fast I can get rid of the class and get out of there every day. What do you think? What do you think? Should there be more accountability? We say this a lot and we say this a lot in Mgtow about accountability and responsibility. But our whole society is that way. Our whole society is screwed on accountability. Anywhere females at a 92% rate run things, there's no accountability, there's no responsibility. We've seen this recently with the GSA, the birthday cakes and the big bottles of moats. You know, they're spending the GSA money. That's the General Service Administration, if you don't know. The people that are responsible to fix the school buildings. Having big birthday parties and meeting in hotels and having beer and wine parties. And then you looked over the picture of these people and you realized that there were 80 some 90% females and lighter than air jobs that weren't responsible. And that's the way I think about our schools now. What the fuck were they doing? We talk about responsibility and accountability a lot, but you can't force accountability. You can't force responsibility to those people because they're the chosen ones. They're the gatekeepers of our society. And they'll whine and they'll cry, "Oh, my job's so hard." That lighter than air job, putting 25 textbooks out and then reading the paragraph for the day was so hard. It would be a joy for me. That would actually be a joy. I would do that with vigor. I would do that with vigor because anything was better than working in a steel mill. Anything was better than laying road cement or building buildings, being 100, 200 feet up in the air. Constant fear of dying, working on a fishing boat, working in a logging industry. Maybe we should give those guys those jobs because they'll appreciate them. And they'll teach with a little vigor, and maybe they'll have a little accountability for the children in those situations. Because they are children. Big teenagers, but they're still children. They have minds of children. It's alarming and it's disgusting that we don't hold them responsible. And everybody, and then we got this argument from the city officials and the politicians. Oh, it's about the unions. No, it's not about the unions. Pay them, and then make sure they have a passion for their job. That's all we're asking. Make sure they have a passion for their job. Because obviously nobody had a passion for their job in Fort Myers high schools, South Fort Myers high schools, because they're so worn out from a long season, and now they get 4 months off. Oh, that's a hell job there, huh? Having to lay down a curriculum that's already made for you out of a book that's already written for you. All you had to do is show up and say, open the page to 24 and read it, and then we'll talk about it. That would be a joy for me. Oh my God. But that's the schools we live in. That's the society we live in. The schools our kids have to go to school in. Homeschooling becomes more prevalent and probably better for them because they don't have to put them, the boys on. How many of those boys were on ADD drugs? Probably because they just wanted to bust out of that chair. They couldn't sit in that chair one more moment because they're held captive in that chair. The first line in the article was high school football player. The first line in the article was high school football player. That's what that boy was. They labeled him as the high school football player. Now think about that videos about the human doing. He wasn't a boy. He wasn't a student. He wasn't a human. He was a high school football player. He was the fireman, the policeman, the worker. And the girl was labeled the victim. She was a victim of kidnapping, supposedly, over a long period of time. The sex industry. Because she just couldn't control herself. But the boys were human doings, and the girls were human beings. The boys were human doings, and the girls are human beings. And that's what we talk about in Mgtow a lot. We talk about being a human doing. And all I am is a protector, provider for society. And that's what the boys were. They were human doings, and the girl was a human being. And the girl had no agency. And it must have been the boys. And the administrators are invisible people that don't exist, that have no job to do. And the police are invisible human doings, which are out there doing something, but they weren't doing their job at that school because they didn't consider the kids human beings. They herd them into these places like chattel, into a slaughterhouse of mental retardation and ineptness and human depravity. It's been an hour. I've been blabbering on because I'm mad about this. I didn't think a video could quite sum up what I wanted to say about this incident. It just didn't do it for me. I couldn't articulate in less than 10 minutes about how I felt about this. And I needed to get it off my soul. And I needed someone to hear it. So thanks a lot, man. Maybe I'll be back later to talk. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll John Galt out and never be heard from again. That's the way I feel right now about this. Participate in a society that accountability and responsibility of adults were surrendered. And someone said the children were responsible because too much parentage of the adults that were responsible. Because someone was protecting them because the gatekeepers could never be responsible for their crimes. That's why we got Mgtow. That's why we need Mgtow. That's why we need more red pill thinkers, secondary thinkers, to look at the real problems, not the surface value problems that you see in the newspaper, anarchism. Why aren't there girls making video games? It's stupid. It's stupid. Feminism, it's stupid. They should just claim it femalism. Why was a female servicing 25 boys in high school, John, and no one knew? Why can't you say she was simply a confused young lady in a confused system with a bunch of confused boys? Sit down and have a chat about this, have a real honest talk about this, about whose responsibility it was. Could never have been the school administrators. So he's working so hard. We need them so much. Oh, we need them so much so they can fail at their jobs over and over and over and over and over again. It's sickening. It makes me sick. It makes me want to throw up. And with that, I've been going an hour. I'll keep it nice and short. Thanks a lot for showing up. If you showed up, thanks a lot for listening. If you listen, if you have anything you want to say, throw it down in a low bar in a few minutes and say it. If you have any questions, toss them out there. I'll answer it. I'm going to go get a beer. It's been a long day. And with that, thanks a lot, Mgtows. Love each and every one of you. Keep on being Mgtow and asking the questions that need to be asked about this society we live in of useless and inept blue pill traditional people that can't seem to do their jobs, can't seem to do anything right. You guys take care.